Welcome back. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. Thank you for joining us once again. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks, and my good friend, Drew Peterson. Thank you so much for believing in me. I also want to thank Paul Cardall. He's allowing me and he's given me permission to use his music. That beautiful music you're listening to right now, that's from Paul Cardall. He's got 25 million active listeners every month. He's one of the most amazing men you'll ever meet. And he was kind enough to let us use his music for the beginning and the end of this podcast. I am so excited for you guys today. We have an amazing person on today. His name's Danny Deaton. Thank you for joining us, Danny.
Very, very excited to be here.
Yeah.
And that music is amazing. So, Paul, good job. Kudos to you.
Yeah, it really does bring a feeling to this place, and I really try to do that on purpose. And so, Paul, thank you for doing that. Let me give you a little background on Danny. He is first and foremost a husband and father to 3 energetic children. He's also a certified interventionist and the owner of Living Proof Recovery Services, which we're going to learn more about here. And as a 13-year recovering addict, Danny uses his expertise and knowledge to assist families and individuals plan and support a complete path to recovery. And he's going to talk about that. His passion is helping families have success where they have failed in the past. Danny's very passionate about what he does for a living. He loves helping people, and I see that a lot with people who have made it through addiction. And he really shouldn't be here. And we are blessed to hear his story today. And I know this is going to inspire you. It's going to cause you to want to not only maybe help yourself, but you know someone who's struggling, and this story is going to make a difference. So we are just blessed to have Danny here today. So again, thanks for being here, Danny.
I'm excited. I tend to think of myself as a simple man, and I know you've had a lot of incredible people on the show with high accolades and achievements. So it's kind of humbling to be here, but at the same time, I'm just grateful and hopeful to share something that might help somebody out there.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with, just kind of getting to know you a little better. Tell us about where you grew up and kind of about your family situation and what it was like growing up with you.
Growing up was awesome. I look back and the only word I really have to associate to my childhood was awesome. I loved life. I was the oldest of 4. I grew up in Sandy, Utah, close to the mountains, and I spent a lot of my time there.
Right, yeah.
I went to Alta High School when I grew up, but before that time, when life gets a little more complicated, as a young boy, I played every sport I could, as many we could fit in. I was active in scouts. I was active on anything, whether it was a 4-wheeler or motorcycle or anything I could get my hands on, or any way to get in trouble. I loved playing with my friends, which was the only reason I liked school.
Right.
But I truly loved every day and waking up every day to make the most of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like overall you had a pretty good, solid childhood. I mean, I know no childhood's perfect, but at times it could probably feel like it was perfect, right? I would imagine you felt that way at times.
Yeah. And when I look back, it took a lot of self-reflection and some struggles in life to dig through what I thought and to kind of figure out what was hurting and what was uncomfortable inside. Because as far as my childhood and the influences I had, my neighbors were amazing. Leaders, whether it was sports leaders, church leaders, everyone had a good impact in my life. And it took some unfortunate situations I put myself in to learn the void I had and how I hurt inside. But ultimately, I look back and I tried to self-reflect for a long time, and it took a terrible experience in my life to bring light to that.
Yeah.
But as a young man, what was really hard for me was understanding what determined my worth.
Interesting. Yeah.
That my worth was something that the outside world determined. So what I had, what I made, what I did, and not who I was.
Right.
And I fell victim at a young age to portraying to everyone else that I had a certain amount of things, that I made a certain amount of money by what I wore, what I drove. And it started with little lies. And it was very innocent. And I think we all do that. We
Sure.
want the girl in school to think we're
yeah.
way cooler than we are, right?
Absolutely.
We stand a little taller. We
Yeah.
flex our muscles a little bit more.
Yeah.
Our mediocre job is a very important job to the
Right.
world, you know. And so
Right.
that was one of the difficulties that started at a young age. And I had a father who came from nothing and became one of the most successful, incredible people I've ever known.
Yeah.
I watched that journey. I had other relatives, people that I grew up around that had that same pattern. And these people, the influence they had in my life was a positive one. They were very loving and kind and caring despite my situation and who I was and everyone else around us. But
Right. Yeah.
I felt like in order to be the man, I had to be like them. So the expectation at a young age was set very high.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something. This is common. I think most kids growing up, we go through this period in our life where we're not quite sure who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and we're trying to portray something else because it makes us feel better.
Yep.
And I think that's, unfortunately, I think we all go through that, and some worse than others. But, so I think that's a pretty common thing.
It is. And it's hard because all these feelings we have when we're young and we're navigating the world, we're not even sure what those feelings are, where they
Right.
come from. And what happens is we begin to harbor secrets.
Yeah.
So my mantra for life now, and it's what I live my life by, it's how I try to parent, how I try to be a husband, how I try to be a friend, it is our secrets that keep us sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I look at it and I think at the beginning, a lot of the secrets that we carry are very small. They're insignificant. And really the impact they have on our life start really small.
Yeah. We justify them.
Yeah.
It's like, it's no big
Rationalize,
deal.
you kind of
Yeah.
work your way through them, and they aren't life altering. But the longer we harbor those secrets,
Mm-hmm.
the more they fester
Right.
and turn into things that eventually change the course of, or shape the course of our life.
Right. Yeah. And I know we'll get more into that. And I would add to that, I talk a lot about with my clients that if they're honest with themselves, they'll never relapse.
Yeah.
And it goes along with basically what you're saying is the secrets are what keeps us sick. It keeps
Yep.
us stuck. It keeps us from not moving forward.
Yep.
Or it keeps us from changing,
Yep.
So I'm glad you pointed that out.
And for me, it started with little lies, telling people I was cooler than I was or had more than I did. And it eventually took me down a very dark path in life. And I always summarize, when you going back to your question to kind of describe who I am and growing up, I was the Eagle Scout, returned LDS missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ. I was a college graduate. I had played many sports in school. I had lots of friends. I was active in everything I did. I spent my summers in Lake Powell, my winters up at Snowbird Ski Resort.
Right.
And eventually I became a drug addict that was spent time behind bars.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty polarizing difference.
For sure. Yeah.
And getting from the point I was growing up to the point where I was fighting for my life, I look back and I attribute all that to the secrets.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you point that out as well. And I really want to get into that because what you're basically pointing out too is no one's immune from this.
No one.
I mean, it doesn't matter how great your childhood was. It doesn't matter if everything was just kind of laid out before you. I'm not saying that's what was for you, but it could be a perfect childhood, but doesn't mean you can't become an addict on something, or something tragic could happen and then lead you down a completely different path.
Exactly.
Right.
And
so
I love talking about it now, and that there's people like yourself, Todd, who talk about it. Because I think a lot of us in our childhood, we grew up in that era where we just didn't talk about things.
Right.
It could have been questions pertaining to sex or the anatomy of a woman or a man, or any curiosity that we had in our mind. The society standard for a lot of us, was you just didn't talk about it.
Right.
And I think now talking about it, we all kind of understand that, like you said, no one's immune. being open about what I went through and the struggles that I experienced in life. I have yet to have an experience in the last few years where after sharing my story with someone, it wasn't an immediate hug with tear-filled eyes because it was either their sister or them,
right,
or their father or their spouse. You know, it's not someone who's saying, oh, on my mom's side, 3 generations ago, I had an uncle who was an alcoholic.
right.
It is very close to home, if not in every single home.
For sure.
Everyone knows someone that's suffering. So I'm glad that people are starting to talk about it.
Yeah, no, me too. And again, that's why I'm so grateful and excited for you to be on today. Because we were talking about this before we got on air here. I really believe that this story is going to save someone's life today. And I know that sounds kind of dramatic at times, or, but I really do believe that. And so why don't we, tell us what happened. Let's just go back. Things are going well in your life. Everything seems to be going in the right direction. Take us from that point and then share your story.
Yeah, so the summary was, in high school, as much as I loved life, I got into trouble too. I was the guy who went to the parties. I loved hanging out. My life was unmanageable at the time, and I was engaged in drinking and smoking marijuana and doing drugs at the time.
Mm-hmm.
After high school, I actually moved to Hawaii with some friends. Long story short, we lived the life. We were there.
Right.
We were surfing. We were working at a jet ski company. And I had a pretty sobering experience one night after thinking that I was living every guy's dream. I was living there with my 3 best friends.
Right.
There were girls coming in from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We were surfing and enjoying life. I remember laying on the beach one night on a boogie board, staring up at the moon. And I felt this incredibly empty feeling. As though that light from the moon was going right through me. And I knew what it was. It was based upon the beliefs and the morals and values I had growing up, that I needed to do something more with my life. It wasn't all about partying and having a good time. So long story short, I came home. I got my life in order. I took care of a lot of things I needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I went at the age of 22 and served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I went down to Brazil. I learned to speak Portuguese.
Oh, wow.
I got to know one of the most beautiful people and cultures in the world. I came home. I got married. I graduated from the University of Utah. At one point, thought maybe being an attorney was a good idea. So I graduated with a communications degree, argumentation, decision-making.
Yeah.
Just started to live life. Just started to do what we all do. Okay, we're going to get married. We're going to start a business. I'm going to, start putting my life together. There were still some underlying issues that were unsettled inside. I had an injury or 2 snowboarding.
Okay.
And for sake of time, I was introduced to Oxycontins through a friend. I had been prescribed pain pills here and there, and I was always the one, right? In my mind, there's 2 types of people, and it doesn't have to do with just opioids, but there's the person who consumes a pill, and they don't like how they feel, and it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, they don't like.
They just want it to go away, and they want to feel in control again. Then there's people like me. The second that pill's swallowed, before it even hits my stomach, the skies part. The heavens open and angels are playing trumpets. Right. It is the feeling I've always been seeking.
Sure.
So when I was introduced to Oxycontins, and this is kind of back when the epidemic happened, when those were introduced to society, and we know the wreckage that's happened from them.
Right, yeah.
This wasn't fun and games anymore. I quickly became addicted and dependent. And truthfully, what happened is this phase of my life became the functioning addict.
Yeah.
But what I kind of learned to do as a small boy or a young boy came forward tenfold, which was harboring secrets. So I was still very productive. I actually was able to complete college while being addicted to Oxycontins.
And when you say secrets, were you hiding this from everyone?
Everyone.
What you were doing? Just trying to pretend everything's fine?
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
I was still able to do my civil duties, my church duties, my interacting and keeping relationships intact. And I did it for a while. I actually felt like I was a better version of myself, a person that I wasn't inhibited by things anymore. I was able to just feel the way I wanted. When you talk about the snowball effect, I don't think there's really a lot of things in life that apply more directly than addictions, whether that be drugs or alcohol.
Sure.
My secrets not only kept me sick, but I became more and more ill because of them. And quickly my life became unmanageable. I had a divorce. This small little insurance company I had barely started was gone. All the material things I had started to vanish. Became really resourceful at selling things I had, or it escalated quickly. And I think anybody who suffers from this, or anyone who loves someone who suffers from this, can see that pattern and how things can quickly escalate.
Right.
But yet we as humans have a really high tolerance for pain and suffering.
Right.
So we kind of settle down and we find that groove that we get into. Well, just like I did in my addiction, so did my family and everyone around me that loved me or cared about me. Not knowing what to do, maybe a little bit of denial, a little bit of stigma kicks in.
Yeah.
As soon as I got divorced and lost some of the things I had, my addiction quickly escalated into the next level. And so here I was, a returned missionary, college graduate, taking a little bit of Oxycontin once in a while. When I say a little bit, you take a pill and you break it in half, and then you break it into a quarter. Okay. And then you take that quarter and you break it again. That's how much it starts with. To the point where then you're consuming 10 to 15 to 20, 30, 40, 50 pills a day.
Wow.
Getting so sick that I remember if I ever ran across a bottle of Loratabs that has 20 or 25 in there, you'd pop the top and you would down the whole thing, chewing them up and taking whatever water, something around to swallow it, just to take the edge off. So I became a rag doll to something that took me down a very dark path.
At this point, does your family know what's going on, or is it still you're still trying to keep it from them? I mean, obviously they're noticing the downward spiral, but
I wish I could use all the adjectives. There was a gentleman named Dave on your show from the Other Side Academy, and he had the perfect words to describe an addict or an alcoholic. But you become very good at deceiving, manipulating, cheating, lying.
Yeah.
So everyone around me knew something was wrong, something was off. But I think out of fear, they didn't know what to do. They didn't approach it.
Right.
Maybe denial. There's a million things that hold us back from taking that mighty step to stopping that insanity. So it just continued and it continued and it continued. And unimaginable things happen. When people see someone standing under the overpass of the freeway holding a sign or sleeping on a sidewalk, they weren't born like that.
Right.
Things happened. Like several events took place for their life to become that terrible.
Yeah.
And so I look back and the same things happened. I quickly developed an addiction that caused a need to pay for it.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people do is you end up stealing, robbing, or selling. Every single addict eventually does one of those.
Yeah.
So I ended up surrounding myself and doing things with people and in places that I had never imagined doing in my life before. And it got really bad to the point where my family started to isolate themselves from me. I wasn't really welcomed around there as much, even though I finagled my way back in at times a little bit when I needed something, but I was alone.
Yeah.
And one of the terms I love to live by nowadays is the opposite of addiction is connection.
Love that.
But the true nature of addiction is isolation and darkness. It always starts fun. And breaking news to mom and dad now for what I do in a living is, believe it or not, when this began, when your loved one or your spouse or your child was first introduced to this, it felt amazing. Yeah. Their life is not to the point now because it was terrible from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
It started out because it was amazing. So here we are.
That's a good point. And
I am a rag doll now. If you look at my entire life as a drug addict, 90% of it was a functioning addict taking manageable amounts that escalated. And then the last 10% of it was heroin, cocaine, meth, anything that I could get my hands on, all of it.
Right.
And actually what I preferred was all of it together at the same time. And I got to a place where I was using recklessly in a way that each and every day I was using the amounts of drugs to take any person's life.
Yeah.
And not only did it get to that point because I needed it, because you get sick and the withdrawals are so terrible, but in order to get past being sick and actually want to feel good, because we all want to feel good.
Right.
The amounts were absolutely insane. So that last 10%, when things got really crazy, I lost my house. I had lost everything. I was sleeping in a storage unit, and which is against the law, by the way. They came to the storage unit to repossess some things of mine, like a motorcycle. So I got kicked out of the storage unit and was living in my car. You think at any point that there were several in my life, but you think at some of these points, and if you love someone, you've seen them, where how can they not see it? You ask yourself, how do they not see what is happening right now? How is this not enough to wake them up and to be like, you need to change. You're going to die.
Yeah.
I just keep going. You just keep going. You just keep going, which is the power of addiction.
Yeah.
So I got to the point, real quick, to summarize the story, where things are terrible now. They're bleak. They're dismal. And I'm living in my car. I have nothing left. I have nothing left to sell or pawn. I was too afraid to go and rob. So I essentially robbed for myself, and everything I had, I'd sold. It was gone. We got really desperate from being sick one day. I had a friend of mine. We came up with this genius idea that we were going to call the drug dealers, and when they came, we were going to rob them of what they had. My buddy was pretty big and strong.
Sure.
He was just going to corner them with the car, put them in a headlock, whatever. I mean, the thoughts are insane, but at the time, it made perfect sense.
Made sense to you guys.
Desperation kicks in.
Yeah.
Well, he's flying through a neighborhood. I was so sick and shivering and dope sick, if anyone understands that term, that my seat was laid back and my feet were up on the dash, and I was in a coat just shivering. I was so sick because I was so dependent at this time, addicted. He's flying through the neighborhoods trying to get him, chase him down, and they're running, and he hits a parked car in this neighborhood, probably going 30 or 40 miles an hour. My feet hit the dash, busted both of my ankles, and I ended up on the hood of the car, bouncing off the hood and then in the front of the street.
Wow.
There were needles all over inside the car. There was paraphernalia. It was something out of a horror film. That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, we got back in, left, avoided ever getting in trouble, driving home without a windshield on the car. I mean, can you imagine?
Right.
It was mind-boggling. Well, we got back. He took me home and put me in the basement of this home of his, and that is where I thought would be the end of my life. And there were several other things that had taken place. I had already been arrested a couple times on little things, and my life was pretty dismal. I weighed 100 pounds or less, soaking wet. I hadn't eaten for many days. I don't know if I passed the threshold of how long you're able to go without water. Every vein that ran through my body had turned black.
Wow.
And I was just preparing to die. I was way too scared to take my own life, or too afraid. But I knew that the time was near. And My friend had left. He went out to find drugs and was gone for quite some time. He was trying to get something to help me not be sick. It's a really sacred experience, and I actually have a little video that portrays this that I wish people could see and hopefully draw some strength from. But
for sure,
I laid there and actually felt a spiritual separation from my body, and I remember not knowing if I was still alive or not. And I was actually sober, but I was so sick. I was so weak that I was hallucinating or something at the time. While I'm laying there waiting to die, I hadn't seen anyone in my life or anyone I loved for quite some time. That night, coincidentally, the night prior, I mean, I didn't find this out till way after this event, but my father and my brother, who were in different homes at the time, had a very similar dream, the same dream that they were speaking at my funeral. And
whoa, they both had the
yeah, my dad had been awake all night telling my mom about this unsettling feeling, and he's like, something's not right. And then the next morning when my brother was explaining to my dad, I had the worst night. I had this, nightmare about Danny. They knew that was divine like inspiration. So they went on a manhunt looking for me, and I guess they looked for quite some time. I don't know all the events of that day, but it was towards the end of the day they were about giving up, and the gentleman who I was in the car with, the one who took me into the basement of that home, they ran into him at a gas station, and my brother saw him and knew him, chased him down, ran him down, and said, "You got to tell me where my brother is. Where's my brother?" And he was scared. He was fearful,
Sure, yeah.
But they told him. So at some point in the day, I don't know if it was day or night, I remember laying on that floor, and when I say laying there, I was laying there with my face like melting on the floor, drooling on myself, not being able to move. My legs are broken.
You're busted up from that.
Busted up, and I am so... If a drug addict plays the movie all the way to the end, I was at the end, past the end, and I remember laying there, just laying on the floor looking up, and for the first time in, I don't know, a few days, I saw this light come across the floor as the door opened. And it was very symbolic, but it was very real also. Right. And then when that light opened, I saw two people walk in this basement door. And to my surprise, it was my dad and my brother.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I looked up at him, and the feeling that I felt the most was shame and just utter disgust. My father knelt down over the top of me, and this is, of course, after a great deal of time of failing as a parent on what to do, but he knelt down perfectly over the top of me and just calmly said, "We're here to help, but you have to want to do this. If you're not ready, I have made peace with God, and we will leave." And he looked at me and waited, and I stayed quiet. I was silent. Mm-hmm. So my father, who was my idol and my best friend, stood up and walked away. My brother turns to me and looks at me, starts in desperation, "Please, please, just get up. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to die." I couldn't say anything. I couldn't even look him in the eye. And so he turns and walks away. And I remember that fleeting light as they walked away, as the door was closing. And I mustered up enough strength to just yell, "Help."
Wow.
My brother turned around, picked me up. I was so frail and so malnourished and weak. He just scooped me up off the floor like a child, put me in his arms, put me in my dad's car, took me home, where my mom wrapped a quilt around me, gave me a kiss, and they took me up to the University of Utah to start my medical detox. And it was nothing short of divine intervention that day.
The thing that really, the whole thing's amazing to me, but the part that really made my heart sink is when your dad and brother were leaving and the doors closing and the lights going away.
Yeah.
And almost like, had you not said even help, the door closes and they're probably thinking he doesn't want it, right?
That's it.
That really got me when you said that. And luckily, thankfully, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, you were able to say, help.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even at such a beautiful moment in my life, I look back, I mean, the biggest temptation and the strongest urge was for them just to leave, go away, and to refuse that help. And, it took lots of failed attempts as a family, and we've learned that throughout the years, of them doing things wrong before they ultimately got to that place of, we're done. And I think that's one of the most powerful pieces in our society. Now you look at addiction and alcoholism, what it's doing to the world.
Right.
It's having an incredible, devastating impact. And I say this with all due respect, but there's no virus out there that is terrorizing. I've seen it firsthand. Sorry.
You're good.
I have been in countless homes the last year or two, and families are being ripped apart by the same thing that almost ripped mine apart. And so we all fail. Families fail, and it's not because they're not trying. They fail because of so many things that impede us from getting to that moment. Mine was a very like real, graphic, vivid moment. But all families that have someone suffering, they have several of those moments where we need to do something different.
Right.
So that's turned into the goal, and my mission in life is to help families overcome that biggest obstacle.
Right. Wow. What a story. And thank you. And I know there's more to it. So you go to detox.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. I mean, that's brutal.
Brutal.
But I'm curious, going back when you think, you're at detox, what's your mindset at that point? Because obviously you're going to go through hell there because you're going to detox.
Yep.
Are you thinking like, I still don't want to do this? Or are you thinking at this point, I've got to go through this or I really am.
Well, and that's such a good question. I'd had so many moments. I mean, those little tiny moments of clarity, every person suffering from addictions has those moments. I want to stop. I want to stop. I want to stop. I want to stop. If you had $1 for every time you said that,
right,
it'd be amazing. But yes, it's going to be terrible. I had turned over every stone, and I knew there was no other choice. It was either die or go through this. And I've stayed in contact with some people. Well, I did for a while that worked up there, because I think I set a record. I was in detox for about 17 days. Wow. That's how sick I was.
Yeah, that tells you a lot, because usually we dictate how bad someone's been based on how long they ended up having to stay in detox.
And it was, I actually left 3 times. They thought they had got me to a place where I could go and socially detox at a treatment center, but 3 times I was returned because my body was so sick and would go into I would start to convulse and shake so hard that, it chipped my teeth. I remember I had a few teeth that chipped because I would shake so hard from being so sick.
Wow.
But yeah, I did that, and it was terrible. The word you just would use it was. And then I did inpatient residential treatment for about 4 months.
Okay.
At that point, they'd kind of had enough of me probably. And so I moved into a sober living house. I was awaiting a court date, and I went to court. And again, painting that picture of who I was as a child, standing in front of a judge for several different felony charges for possession in Utah. Whether you have $2 worth of certain drug or not, they're felony possessions.
Right. Yeah.
Reckless endangerment, several other charges. I got sentenced to a year in jail, and this was after completing a huge analysis at adult parole and probation. They assess your life. They look at it and see patterns of criminal behavior, how you grew up, how you raised, like what's your probability of being a repeat criminal, or was this one bad time in your life?
Yeah.
The recommendation to the judge was just probation and some community service. But this was at a time when I think judges were so tired of the amount of cases that they had that were drug related, overdose deaths, things like that, that the judge chose something different. And so I spent several months in jail and then was released on an ankle monitor program called the CATS program back then.
Yeah.
And I went and did a completely separate rehabilitation center through the state with an ankle monitor, picking up garbage on the side of the highway, cleaning up parks around the state.
Wow.
And my entire rehabilitation process was close to 2 years.
Man, it's a long time.
The lessons and the things that I learned during that time were absolutely life-changing and beautiful.
Yeah. Well, usually one of the questions I ask, and I'll ask it now, is if you could go back and change anything, would you?
It's a good question. I actually get asked that a lot in some of these families I work with. I was like, well, I would have never had a long-term girlfriend, and I would have eaten a lot more food. Back when my metabolism worked, I would have eaten a lot more food.
It's a good point.
But I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy. But unfortunately, I was stubborn enough that it took nothing short of that to produce concrete beliefs and understanding in my life of what it takes.
Yeah.
And other people similar to myself have to go through it. Other people don't. But for me, it was critical to be who I am today.
Yeah.
So it was a huge setback in life. It was a big chapter in my life that was kind of wasted time. I wasn't contributing much to life or doing anything beneficial for myself. But I think who I am today now was accelerated because of that, in that I would probably be half the person I am today, still living with a lot of the little nuances that we do in life had I not gone through that.
Yeah.
So no, to answer your question, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, and I figured that's what you were going to say. You know, I really believe that, life happens for us. And I think despite how bad it is and going through hell and back, if we can make it through the other side without dying, or you have these opportunities to change, that you look back and go, yeah, I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't be where I'm at. You know, what's interesting too, is if someone met you right now and they had no clue about you, they would never even dream of this guy. I actually saw your picture. I think it was a mugshot.
Yeah.
And you're like 60 pounds. I mean, you're like this shriveled up. I mean, it's pretty horrific.
Lifeless.
And the contrast from your picture now to that, it blew my mind when I saw that.
Yeah, if people are listening, and I have posted it on our social media pages of that contrast, but regardless of your beliefs, my body was without spirit. It was spiritually, they say spiritually bankrupt, and then they're spiritually dead. So that picture you're talking about is when there's nothing there.
Yeah. And you can see it. When you say it like that and you look at the picture, people will go, oh, I get it. Yep, I see that.
And it's amazing how much of this is happening here. So it's been humbling. After I got clean and started putting my life back together, I was desperate to do whatever it took. And the journey from then till now has been miraculous. And we would be here forever talking about that. But I did spend a decade owning and operating some restaurants. And I do laugh and joke that the only thing harder than overcoming a heroin and cocaine addiction is owning and operating some restaurants. So anyone out there who is, I love and admire you. Anyone who's thinking about it, make sure you're really thoughtful before you do that. But it taught me a lot of lessons. And I went 10 years where 6 days a week, my alarm had a 4 on it, if not a 3, getting up to go work hard. And,
wow,
that was nice because it helped us gain what we needed in order for me to be a husband and a father, to, provide for my family monetarily. But a few years ago, I decided to switch gears and do what I'm passionate about and what I see a huge need for. I'm 43 years old, and I know that my production as a working man is no longer my 20 where you seem like life, you're going to live forever. I wanted to make an impact. And so I spent some time analyzing and assessing where I saw the biggest void or where I felt like I could have an impact.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of places and plenty of people listening where we live in societies, despite all the challenges and politics and everything that we have.
Sure.
We are God-fearing,
Yeah.
family-oriented people who want to do the best we can in life.
Exactly.
So I said, okay, that group of people I understand. What's the biggest impact that I can have to help that group of people? Because when you look at drug addiction, alcoholism, there's the whole end of the homeless shelters and
Right.
the challenges that people have in the prisons. And then there's also this la land where people are denying anything ever exists. So my goal was to help families where they're failing. And that is families that are holding their own secret about their loved one who is dying from his secrets or her secrets, get out of their own way. We're blessed in a state here in Utah, and there's several others like us, but here in Utah, there's 60 plus treatment centers open, running with incredible people that want to help you change your life. Well, why are less than 10% of people with addictions ever getting to a treatment center? Ever.
Right. Yeah.
There's no day where someone like myself was going to wake up, go put on my Sunday best, ask my family if we could all get together for family dinner, and proclaim to them, you guys, my life's unmanageable. I need some help. Do you guys think that you could help me get into a treatment center? What would that look like? How would we work that out mathematically or financially? It will never happen. So families sit around thinking that they can pray this better. And if I had $1 for every time I've seen this dynamic, I wouldn't need to work anymore, which is where mom thinks that her prayers and dad's lectures in the office are going to make this come to a halt or change course. Mm-hmm. It never will. Sending your loved one, your spouse or whoever, to see the bishop or the pastor or whoever it is that's your spiritual advisor is not the answer either.
Right.
There will come a time that person can help you more than anyone else, but we struggle so hard getting there. So there's this huge gap, right? There's people who desperately want to change something, and then there's all these places that can help.
Right.
Well, why are we not putting the two together?
Yeah, that's a great point.
So that's kind of where I've spent a lot of my time, is just going in and saying, hey, you guys don't have anything to be scared of. You don't have anything to hide. You all know that I was about as ugly a person as you can be. Yeah. So let's be honest and real. So usually the first time I get to know people, we just get real and to the point quick. And if there's anything I've learned over the last few years, it's that incredibly successful, educated families all fall victim to the same things.
Yeah.
Blame, stigma, denial. I mean, you could go on, but no one actually changes. And for our family, it took me getting to that point, that desperate, dire point that we talked about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to.
Yeah.
So once families learn what it takes to empower themselves to stop and decide, hey, whatever we're not changing, we're choosing. So let's choose something else. Let's change.
I love it. All
I do is try to help them strategize, understand it, and then here's some resources. Here you go. And just push them in the back really hard and hope that that's what it takes. So
love that. Well, that sounds fantastic. And again, I love that you said, hey, you've researched everything. You're like, this is the missing piece that I'm noticing.
Yep.
And that's what's great that you're doing this.
Yeah.
You say I am living proof. What do you mean by that?
So the company that I now do and on my Facebook and Instagram page is Your Living Proof. So YOUR Living Proof. And it's really to give the spouse, the wife, the mother, the brother, the sister, proof. Here is your proof that it can get as bad as it can get. There are several other people who got to a point that I did. Some maybe even a little bit worse. But you don't get much worse than that because you die.
Yeah.
It's to give them factual proof that it's possible.
Right.
that anything is possible, but it's going to take a mighty courage. It's going to take a unified effort as a family.
Yeah.
So your living proof is here. You want it? You think it's impossible? You think you've tried everything? You think you've given up? No. Here's your living proof of a way out.
Gotcha. I love that. That is beautiful. And so you're offering courses now and things like that. I mean, I know you're doing a lot of things, but courses. And I would imagine, do you meet with families like, you and the family in the home kind of thing, or is it always online, or is it both, or how do you do that?
So also doing this, I've gotten really close to several families, and after the fact, I've gone back and I said, hey, tell me about the experience at first. Like, was it scary to reach out? Were you worried? They were always referred by somebody else.
Right.
Typically it's their next door neighbor, because you don't have to go very far now to find people suffering from this. But they would tell me, it was really scary. It's the last thing we want to do, right? We want to plan dinners and dates with our spouses and friends. We want to go on vacations. We want to watch ball games. We don't want to face this terrible, nasty elephant in the room. So most of them, it took a lot. Most of the time, the first phone call I get is after the mom and dad leave the hospital where their son or daughter's in a medical coma, or something very drastic. They found them unconscious on the floor and thought they were dead. They were in a terrible car accident. They've now been arrested. That's usually the first time I get a phone call. So we created some online courses that are for the family and for those that love them, just to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But real tangible living proof examples and knowledge of how do we move forward.
Right.
Here's the problem. How do we approach our loved one? What are our options? Where do we go? How do we do it? And so they can watch those courses online from someone who's been through it. And it's interesting, because where I hope to help a lot of people is it being a very personal, relatable experience where they can be like, yeah, my gosh, that reminds me so much of my husband. That reminds me so much of my son or my daughter.
Yeah.
And it's not from a clinical standpoint where it might be harder for them to understand as much. I'm not here to help them understand the addicted brain and how it works. I'm here to help them understand why they're failing to get any change.
Yeah. I love that. I don't think there's anything out there like that.
There's not.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that is a missing piece. And I think, man, families can get more information like this. Again, bringing that hope and actually feeling like, okay, there is a way here.
Yeah.
Versus like, they throw their hands up. There's nothing we can do kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I love that you're doing that.
That's where we hope to have a big impact, because I always tell people my addiction of many years came to an abrupt halt in a matter of weeks when my family was taught and educated with the tools of what to stop doing and what to start doing.
Right. Yeah.
But forever they just, kept it their own secret. My dirty secrets that almost killed me ended up becoming their secret. So they just didn't do anything. They buried their head in the sand. They hoped they could pray it away. Things that we all naturally do out of love.
Right.
What I'm hoping to say is, hey, you don't have to get to the point where you see your loved one laying on a cement floor looking like death has already taken them. There's things that you can do to change the course of the outcome now. And there are so many places that are equipped with the people qualified and educated to actually help them navigate through that journey that's going to be ahead of them.
Yeah.
But you won't ever have a chance until you get somewhere like that.
Oh, I love that.
So,
well, I love the way you carry yourself and the way you live your life and what you're doing now. It's really impressive. What does a day look like for you? How do you keep this centered, like where you are making sure you're doing the things you need to do for you, also being the husband and the father and all that? How are you, I just want our listeners to know what you do to kind of keep your day to where you're doing the things you need to, but feeling good about yourself.
So I'm a creature of habit. I have a routine and I stick to it. I get up and I work out immediately. Mm-hmm. I have to get my body awake.
Yeah,
I married up. I have an incredible spouse around me.
That helps.
But I try to surround myself with people who have what I want and are who I hope to become. And even though I'm not with them every day, I somehow am in touch with them often, and it rubs off on me. But my day's busy like anybody else. You get up, you're working, you're doing appointments, making calls, helping people throughout the day in a job, and then coming home and trying to create that balance. Being there, being attentive, being present with my family, which is something during the decade of running restaurants I was never, I was just holding on for dear life. But I think ultimately what helps me stay balanced is understanding when you don't feel right, when something feels off, is to talk about it.
Yeah.
Just, even if it seems like it isn't important to somebody else, it's amazing when you allow people around you that opportunity.
Yeah.
You're almost wrong 10 out of 10 times that they're not going to care. They don't have time for it.
Yeah.
People want to help. And when they see someone humble themselves, say, hey, I don't know. I'm not feeling that good today. Like, I don't know what it is. I had that day today. I had a terrible morning. My kids were insane. They didn't want to go to school. It's one of those days they hated dad. Nothing was right. And it took me explaining to my wife, I don't feel good. I actually feel sad inside. And then in return, the advice that she gives me was just beautiful. It was heavenly, and I wouldn't have got that had I not opened up and asked for help a little bit. So I think that's one thing that recovery taught me, is understanding that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that when you are surrounding yourself with the right people, they will help,
Yeah.
So
I love that. Very well said. That's beautiful. So I want to ask you this question. How important is it to help other people, and how does that tie into being in recovery? And how does that support recovery?
Yeah. I really started doing this, and I saw the passion for it. Like during the time when we were running those restaurants, I was never afraid to share my story. And quite often in church, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We meet together. Well, we used to before all this madness, right?
Yeah.
And I would introduce myself and always talk about what I'd been through. Every time I did, even if it was like, hey guys, if you don't know me, we live down the street in that white house and I'm a 13-year recovering drug addict. It's kind of scary, right? Once in a while you get a few people that look at you and they're kind of like, oh my gosh, look at that guy. And I walk down the hall, and it's like, this is pre-COVID, and I'd walk down the hall and they'd stand to the other side of the hallway, like make sure they're 6 feet away from me. But for every one of them, there were 10 people who would come to me, whether it was in person at my house, knocking on my door, calling me, texting me, sending me mail actually sometimes too. Hey, my daughter or my husband or somebody, what do you think? What can I do? Asking just any little questions to start helping them in the right direction.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, every time I did that, it was so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And every time I did that, I felt like it was a way of thanking my God for his mercy. And it beat any paycheck I ever got making food. And so I just thought, man, we're just all out here being efficient, mortal people running around causing problems. But he can make something beautiful out of wreckage.
Yeah.
So just to go and help do that a little bit. And I think nowadays, there was a gentleman on here recently who was talking about pornography. Gosh, what an amazing man. What was his first name?
Hayden.
Hayden. Yes. Yeah. Hayden. Thank you. It's so needed. We need 1,000 more of you, but, to be vulnerable and tell people about how you've suffered is inviting for them.
Yeah.
And those that do it quickly realize that, there'll be some people who kind of look at you weird or judge you, but there's a whole lot of other people who've just been waiting
for it. Yeah.
Waiting for a chance to feel safe with someone they can say, hey, I know what that feels like.
Yeah.
No,
I love it.
So it's very rewarding.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that piece of that. So I've got a few more questions for you, and I could talk to you all day. This is amazing stuff.
I hope.
So do you think that, how does your family view you now? They have to be looking at you going, wow, especially, where they found you laying on that, your dad and your brother, when they saw you laying there, I mean, you had to been this pathetic scene.
Yeah.
But to see you now that I mean, to imagine your family's pretty blown away by all this.
They are. And I think the lessons that we learned as a family because of my struggle at the time is molded us to who we are today, because in the last 13 and a half years, believe it or not, like any other family, there's people who have suffered divorce.
Yeah.
People that have suffered serious other mental illness like depression.
Yeah.
Financial struggle, anything that it is. My family, when they saw me in that pathetic state and what it took to recover, they were also willing to do what those very qualified clinical team advised them to do, which is to do their own recovery. And so they learned very quickly the importance of not harboring secrets. So my family became healthy through my recovery. And it helped them to understand how to be honest with each other, how to be accountable, how to tell on when they're not feeling right.
Yeah.
And it's helped all of us navigate through really hard times.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything my family's been through in the last 13 years that I've learned every other family goes through, it's good times and bad times.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Those bad times, instead of derailing us and tearing us apart, we can actually unite and go through it together. So it's been a positive experience for all of them. They're all very supportive of what I do. They're all very supportive of me. I mean, to the point where they're my biggest fans. And
yeah, I bet.
our relationships actually also are so much more real and they're meaningful. And the substance that I have, I mean, it was a pretty surface level relationship with a lot of people for many years because I was a cheat, a liar, and a thief. But now the relationship I have with my mom, some of my siblings that had suffered during my addiction, it is stronger than ever.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So if people want to get to know you better, sign up for your courses, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So I have a website. It's called yourlivingproof.com.
Okay.
All one word. So YOUR livingproof.com. And also, I'm not really good at social media. I'm trying because that's how people connect, but I have a Instagram and Facebook page that are the same, Your Living Proof.
Okay.
But I post videos on there. And on my website, it has courses that families can take. And it is very clear to help them with those aha moments.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's what we're doing. We have to stop that. This is what we need to do. Because again, the goal, I'm not here to cure anyone, to help them overcome their addiction. I'm here to say stop.
Right.
Stop allowing this insanity, right? It's like being on that merry-go-round. It's going around so fast, you're going to throw up. Because that's when marriages suffer.
Right.
That's when children build resentments towards mom or dad who's consumed by this one person.
Sure.
Stop. Okay, well, it's easier said than done. So it walks them through. They can watch it in the privacy of their home. They can watch it without having to go and talk to someone and tell them about their dirty laundry, to say, oh my gosh, here are the first few steps that we have to take in order to approach our loved one and get them some help. Right. Now, is there a long path after that? Oh my gosh, yes. But that's the beautiful part.
Sure.
I think there's millions of spouses, siblings, or parents out there that if they could just get that person struggling to the front doors of a beautiful place like Wasatch Recovery or any other place, you begin the journey.
Yeah.
How do we get to that point? What do we do?
Yeah.
How do we get there? That's what I hope to have an impact in all of this.
Yeah. I love it. Well, you've given some amazing advice and some amazing guidance and inspiration. If someone's listening right now to your story and they're struggling and they're in a dark place, or a family's listening to this who has a son or a daughter who's in a very, very dark place right now, what would you want to say right now to them to give them some hope?
Well, I've already shed too many tears onto this microphone, but that dark place is somewhere where I lived. I felt it. It consumed me. But to understand the opposite of that, to understand what it feels like to be connected with God, to what it feels like to be connected with yourself, to be able to look in the mirror and see yourself.
Right.
I think my advice would be, no matter how hard this journey is in front of you, it's worth it.
Right.
Whatever you are not changing in your life, you are choosing. So people are like, well, I don't have any choice. I didn't do anything. If you're not changing it, you're choosing it. And there are things that you can do to change the course of your life or this loved one in that you care about. Empower yourself with that information.
Yeah.
I wish I could share it, but we'd be here forever.
I know.
I made these courses to help people understand that exact thing. What are my choices? How can I change this outcome? How do I just get moving forward?
Right. No, I love that.
I truly feel like if everyone could understand the beauty that can happen and occur in your life from such a pathetic and terrible circumstance that you might find yourself in, not only do you get to see miraculous things and miracles from God, but you get to be happy.
Yeah.
You get to be free. And these dark times will be what ultimately molds you into your best self.
Right. Love that.
So are you going to be a statistic and fall into the majority that lose this battle? Or are we going to do something hard to give yourself what I can testify as living proof is a life you never, ever, ever dreamed of? Yeah. My life today is more beautiful than the life I dreamed of as a young boy before I went to hell and back.
Wow.
So it is very possible. It will take a lot of work. But the old phrase, it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Never holds true more than does in a situation like that.
Yeah. Wow, dude, you're amazing, man. Thank you for sharing this with us today.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. This is really, like, I needed to hear this, and I feel so blessed. I get to hear it firsthand, face to face with you. And I know that our listeners are going to truly be blessed because of your story and in the hope that it will come from them listening to this.
Yeah, I
can't
hope.
thank you enough, Danny.
Thanks for having me on. And anyone out there that's on that brink right there where you're just like, I know I need to do something, but I don't know what to do because I'm scared. Reach out to someone, reach out to me, reach out to anyone that you know has had a similar experience, and just get the courage to take those first few steps.
Yeah.
Your loved one won't do it for themselves. It's going to require someone intervening. And, lastly is telling you, you know this better than anyone. When addiction sets into someone's life, they all end up in one of three places.
Yep.
And I'll send anyone on this call or this that's listening on vacation if they prove me wrong. But those three places are either they end up in jail, institutions, or dead.
Yeah.
But everyone rides that crazy merry-go-round for year after year, thinking they're going to be one of those lucky few that just get to exit and live happily ever after without doing something drastic. Yeah.
That's a great point.
Something has to intervene to avoid jail, institutions, or dead.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's the person, the people, the structure, the family that loves someone.
Yeah.
Stepping in and saying no more.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you pointed that out here. Well, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, your website is yourlivingproof.com.
Yes.
And we were talking before that if they can sign up for your courses on there. And if they type in the promotion code, is it BeliefCast?
Yes, BeliefCast, please. We put a big discount in there for everyone on this podcast. This is one of my favorite platforms. I'm always inspired. And so anyone listening there, BeliefCast, all one word, and it'll give you guys a discount when checking out.
Right on. That's awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very
that's
welcome.
So cool. Well, there you go, folks. I told you this was going to be amazing. I hope that you will share this with someone you know who's struggling. Or if anything, it gives you enough courage to reach out and say something and do something different. Keep, don't hold the secret anymore. I love that too.
You'll stay sick as long as you hold that inside.
Yeah. So thank you so much, listeners. I love you guys. I hope you know that. I'm so grateful for the support and the followers and the comments that I receive, it just blows my mind. And it's not because of me. It's because I have amazing guests like Danny on. And, I think this is like the 146th episode.
Wow.
And it just blows my mind that this is where we're at. And,
Wow.
You're on a long list of amazing people. And just, I wish you the best. I will do whatever I can to help support your cause.
Thank you.
I'll send people your way. The list goes on. And I just hope we can continue rubbing shoulders together and working together and helping people overcome this craziness.
I feel the same.
Addiction.
Yep. Thank you, Todd.
I betcha. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Love you. Until next time. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.